Hi, this is Stephanie Miller from The Stephanie Miller Show. Please enjoy this exclusive clip from my show on Political Voices Now. Joyce, where do we start today? We just played David Frum, among others. You quoted Jen Psaki, who said, if elected to a second term, Trump would prosecute anyone he deems an enemy, unleash troops on protesters, essentially unravel the rule of law as we know it. And this time he plans to align his administration with people who will actually help him do it. I can't imagine how terrifying this whole prospect is to you of what could happen.
I hope that it's terrifying to all of us, but my fear is that Trump's bad behavior is so normalized that people no longer pay it attention. We must listen to his words because he tells us what he intends to do. Using the military, using the Justice Department, using the intelligence community, not to pursue American interests, but to pursue individual Americans who are Trump's enemies. And, we need to prepare for this. And by prepare, I mean get ready to vote and make sure he never returns to the Oval Office.
Yeah. Um, I think it's like, as Liz Cheney's been talking about, Joyce, just it's his collaborators, like Mike Johnson. Obviously, the question, we just played him talking about blurring out the faces of the January 6th insurrectionists. Dean Abdallah said Speaker Johnson explained to hold up in releasing J6 tapes, we have to blur some of the faces to protect them from the DOJ. How is this not tampering with evidence? GOP are literally altering evidence to protect them from being held accountable. I mean, I know I've heard the DOJ already has these tapes, but does Mike Johnson need to lawyer up? Or, I mean, what did you make of that?
Yeah, so he probably has, or at least would argue that he has congressional speech or debate clause immunity for doing stuff like this. I think DOJ has, quite frankly, bigger fish to fry right now. But this is something important that we should focus on because it tells us a lot about this speaker's mindset. This is not the Republican Party of law and order, if in fact they ever were. This is the Republican Party of conspiracy and insurrection, and the speaker has made that clear.
Joyce,
You protect your co-conspirators, right? This
yeah,
is protecting co-conspirators.
yeah. And Joyce, I've been asking this question because I did not have a silky chicken queen at my ready all week. But I know Norm Eisen said it's one of the largest unresolved questions in American law, whether you can have a criminal process against a sitting president. We don't know how that would come out. Ty Cobb, former White House lawyer, said both sides are guessing. There's no precedent for it. It would have to be resolved by the Supreme Court. There's no clear legal support for either argument. Well, that's if, God forbid, he gets back in. Yeah. Here's my question. If, like Chris Christie and others predict, he is convicted of a felony in the spring in the J6 trial. Do you not go to prison? I'm confused. Even if you appeal, if you're convicted of a felony, what happens?
So there's a presumption at federal law that once you've been convicted, you should go to prison. Even if you have an appeal, the law says that you should go into custody. There's an exception, and I think Trump will drive a Mack truck through it and take advantage of it. It says that if there is significant issues to be decided in the appeal, then a defendant can get an appellate bond. And Trump will argue, all sorts of immunity and issues of first impression. Unfortunately, those do exist here, and I could easily see him getting an appellate bond from Judge Chutkan if there is a conviction. Boy, we're getting pretty far down the road with that.
You tweeted Trump loses big in court at the end of the week. Now the speed in which appellate courts proceed will determine whether he's tried by a jury before the election. Explain that.
Yeah, so Trump will appeal this immunity ruling by Judge Chutkan. Case can't go to trial until that appeal is decided. It took the D.C. Court of Appeals about a year, by the way, to decide this immunity case, this immunity issue in the civil case brought by Capitol police officers and members of Congress. If it takes them a year to decide in this criminal case, then there won't be a trial before the election. My hope, and if I was a betting person, I might even go so far as to say I would bet on this, is that the appellate court will move speedily on this issue given the gravity of the issues and the fact that there is a good record and already sufficient briefing on this issue. No reason that they can't expedite this in rule. And then the wild card is, will the Supreme Court act quickly? Will they decide to hear the case and take a full year, which would again put things off track? Or will they just decline to hear it and let the appellate court's ruling stand? We'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
We're also helped by what doofuses Trump's lawyers are, aren't we? Didn't they miss a bunch of deadlines?
Yeah.
For things? Isn't that lawyering 101?
So there's always this sort of stuff that goes on. Judges are very lenient with defense lawyers. Here, they've asked the judge pretty consistently for a couple of extra days here and there. Those delays add up over time, but the government has agreed to most of them. The judge has granted them. So we see this sort of stuff happen.
So, Joyce, you talked about the deadline for Jack Smith to provide notice to Trump and his attorneys of any crimes, wrongs, or bad acts the DOJ believes he may have committed that will be part of his prosecution for in J6 for trying to overturn the election. Was that this past Monday?
Yeah, so that has actually just been filed. Okay. I was reading it right before we came on. It's a very interesting document. Steph, you'll like this one because what Jack Smith says is, I intend to lay out all of my evidence in advance, Judge, in a series of pleadings, in my witness list and in my evidence list and in my trial brief. I'm going to tell you exactly what I intend to do. That's great news for all of us in the public because it means we will see it, if not all of it, most of it, that will be publicly available. So we will get Jack Smith's roadmap to what he thinks this trial will look like.
Right. Joyce, one headline today in Mediaite is Trump legal team leaning into January 6th and Ray Epps conspiracy theories in federal election fraud case. I mean, I don't know about you. I am really looking forward to these wacky conspiracy theories, hitting a court of law. Right? I mean, this is, who was it? One former prosecutor said, there's nothing that suggests any of those debunked theories had anything to do with the causation of January 6th. What he and his lawyers have put forth is sort of more of a public relations strategy than a legal one. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for sure the case. Trump is now playing to the jury of public opinion, hoping that he can get enough voters on his side to go his way at the polls and to make any convictions go away. But here's the reality, Steph. I mean, I spent a lot of hours in courtrooms, in front of juries. And the thing about juries is they're really good at listening to the judge's direction that they should decide the case on the evidence in front of them, and that they're entitled to make credibility assessments about arguments and witnesses. Juries are really smart, and groups of American citizens, when they sit down together and discuss this stuff, they really get it. And I think that the conspiracy theories, if Trump offers any of them at trial, will come off as just that, conspiracy theories. I think juries will reject them, and they will do more than just reject the crazy.
Right.
It will damage the credibility of the defense across the board. Here's my one regret, and you and I have discussed this before. I think it's just a terrible shame that there will not apparently be cameras in federal court so that Americans can watch this trial. I still hope that some way can be found to do that. It seems to me that it would be pretty easy to permit audio.
Right.
But we'll have to see what the courts do.
So here's my fear, too. So potential jurors in Trump's federal election interference trial may already know they're in the jury pool by now. The U.S. District Court for D.C. has sent prospective jurors a pre-screening form for jury selection that would for the March 4th trial. Pretty easy for them to suss out maybe that this is the Trump trial. What terrifies me is I think it was Claire McCaskill, Joyce, that said, all it takes is one juror, to lie. One Trumper that's, that lies about being a Trumper or whatever it is, right? Does that concern you as well?
So as a prosecutor, you're concerned about that in every case. That's your job in jury selection. I think DOJ will, like we always do, research your jurors. I guess somebody could deviously delete all of their social media, right? But I think by and large, in the voir dire process, jurors are placed under oath, and if they lie, they're committing a federal felony. So, there are ways to make sure that your jury is truthful and honest in selection.
There it is, my first drink of the day, Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. Many of you know my story. I stopped drinking wine for 3 years during COVID, during the lockdown as part of a health reset. Now I drink wine in moderation, but this is an amazing new product. I've always believed in probiotics and Z-Biotics. Check this out. You drink just one of these. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I am using this and I feel great in the morning. I don't have to worry if I have an extra glass of wine. I still feel great in the morning. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. I've always had acid reflux problems. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. All I know is it works. It is Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic. Go to zbiotics.com/politicalvoices or scan the QR code on the screen right now.